Here we go. Welcome to this conference is being recorded. I love when she announces that, as if my pressing the button didn't already authenticate the fact that it was being recorded. Thank you. Part two today. Cold, miserable weather in Tennessee. Feel free to share with me your weather misery as well, wherever your geography is. Um, First thing I wanted to do, I absolutely love alternative payments. I mean, I just have to sit here. I become this incredible junkie. I didn't accomplish anything else with regard to my business over the course of last week. But there's so much going on, and it's so incredibly exciting, as if that kind of continues what I said from part one last week. And there have been some interesting developments that have occurred over the course of last week to this week. So first and foremost, in my exuberance for learning how to use this system, which is way past a go to training or a go to webinar, I wanted to make sure that we first touch base with any open items or anything that you had for questions with regard to last week's session. So I want you to dig deep into your cerebral cortex or whatever the brain thing is, and ask some questions in the chat area as far as what might be open as far as outstanding or gray areas or whatever. And then I've got some updates. And I've got some really cool things that happened over the course of today, in fact. So take a moment and just kind of chat back into the meeting chat as far as what might be open items. There was some great stuff that kind of emerged over the course of last last week. Towards the end of the session, we got really, I thought we got kind of really highbrow, which is good because I like that. It's very good. It means that we're thinking. But I wanted to put this on the open items on the whiteboard because we can save that as part of the session, which is cool. Rather than me downloading the chat log, we can save that as part of this presentation. The other thing that we're going to be doing a lot of today is we're going to be surfing the web. I can sit here and babble about what these alternative payments are. But a lot of the stuff that we're going to look at today is really more visual. So I want you to, as we look at this stuff, first off, I want you to make sure that I want you to tell me if any of the bandwidth on my end might be crackling or anything like that. But today, in looking at some of these more obscure payment methods, the visual really means a lot. So from that regard, I'm just going to start in with the slides. Welcome to part deux of alternative payments. We're gonna do a little bit more about the buckets and the key players. Some of the questions and follow up that I had thought of. First of all, is when we look at alternative payments, and we looked at a lot of that e-commerce. The e-commerce demographics, statistics, the metrics that are really out there from a compelling perspective. And then I went. I guess another anecdote that I add is I went shopping for a new printer the other day, and I decided to, instead of the color inkjet stuff that I had kind of been stuck on, I went back to the standard laser printer. But while I was in Office Depot, there were two things that were quite interesting. First and foremost, Serve, the Serve American Express card, is everywhere in Office Depot, everywhere. So they have a big display of Serve cards. Granted, they're temporary Serve cards, but they're there, and they're $2.95 to purchase at Office Depot. So that was the first kind of reiteration of how alternative payments are becoming much more mainstream. Secondly, I decided to kind of put my money where my mouth is, if you will, and I bought a laser printer, and I actually and one of the payment methods that Office Depot supports is PayPal. and it was quite interesting because they didn't the the checkout associate has never seen PayPal used before as a checkout method. So, which means that I really need to start taking my iPad with me everywhere and start video recording this stuff, because when I checked out and bought my brother printer, which by the way is made in Tennessee, it actually asked for my cell phone number, which is registered to my account, and then it asked for my PIN, which actually is registered to the credit card, to the PayPal debit card. So that's kind of my account-wide PIN, and it automatically authorized against my PayPal balance, and the sales the checkout associate had to use PayPal as the tender method in order for it to continue to process correctly. So the machine itself, I guess the machine was I'm going to say it was probably a Verifone machine. It was probably one of the Verifone POS terminals that processed it fine, went out and got the authorization. But for it to confirm, the point of sale system, the tender type had to be correct, so he kind of had to back out of it. He thought it was a credit or a debit card payment. Probably was just basically, just common, just kind of a routine practice, just press that, credit or debit. And that was the first time he had ever seen somebody use PayPal as the method of payment. Now, I did not use my PayPal debit card, which points to my balance. I used my phone number and my PIN to access my PayPal balance. So those were, in fact, two distinct alternative payments. Observations, for lack of a better term, that I noticed even at some place right down the street here in Brentwood, Tennessee, of basically, shopping for something so ubiquitous as a printer. So our alternative payments becoming mainstream is PayPal becoming one of the top five, or one of the standard five. The other thing that I'm hoping you guys would like to chime in on this discussion is that, and then I've got a little tidbit that I think you guys will find interesting. It is, do you think ACH is an alternative payment method, or is it still viable as an alternative payment method from a brick and mortar as well as an e-commerce? Is it an alternative payment method from an e-commerce and from a brick and mortar perspective? So I'm going to give you a couple seconds, well, not a couple seconds. I'm going to give you a minute to kind of chat back from that regard. This is food for thought. I need some finger typing here. So chat back. Is ACH alt pay Okay, so I had a no right there, and um, I would and would someone care to elaborate as they, as basically from that point, why is it not viable? Not easy access. It is all of your bank information. There's another thing. There's another key term that basically there are four ways. There are four steps within a payment system, or four key components of a payment system. It is authorization, clearing, settlement, and finality. Which one of the four do you think, or which ones of the four do you think prove the most problems in either e-commerce or in brick and mortar? and I'll chime in as well as we go through. Having run an e-check, an electronic check operation for one of the largest payment processors in the country from an e-commerce perspective, we found that we had three distinct issues with ACH. One, it's cheap. So an alternative payment from an ACH perspective really definitely meets this second major theme of lower payment processing fees. Because yeah, if you're selling a $100 item and it's only costing you 15 cents or 10 cents to effect the payment, that's really, really good. Then what you have from those four components is authorization, clearing, settlement, and finality. So from an authorization perspective, there's kind of the two A's, and I'm going to be doing an ACH webinar coming up for kind of an E and an M commerce. But I was thinking, as I start thinking about this stuff, what are some of the things as we look at alternative payments? First off, one thing that makes it very, very difficult is the fact that authorization from an ACH perspective is simply verbiage. So when you look at, and I'm going to type this in because I want to. Let's increase the font size, and there. As an alt payment. Authorization is simply verbiage, okay? Now, in a check or in a credit card environment, what is authorization? If anybody wants to add to that. And what we're missing from an ACH perspective, it misses the second A, which is, anybody know? Begins with A. It's not authorization, but it's A. Come on. Let's go. Plenty of stuff to do today. I know webinars are not terribly interactive. Let's go. A. U. T. H. E, come on. Am I the only one participating here? N. Authentication. Okay? We're missing authentication. You don't see my typing. You don't see my typing. That's wild. Well, how's that? Maybe it does now. We'll leave it right there. Just came on. It must be on. Now it works. It must be on one of those delays when I hit enter. ACH is an alt payment method. The authorization is simply verbiage. I agree. Blah blah blah. You can sign to anything. It's generally like terms and conditions online. Yeah. Click all the way through. It misses the second the second A, which is authentication. So as much as you get a lower payment processing fee, you're missing the first component, which is a robust auth and auth format component. So that's missing. And then even though it might clear, i.e. it might be submitted into the Federal Reserve ACH network, you have settlement risk. Okay? And more than likely, does anybody want to answer this? With a credit or debit card that has an authorization code, do you have settlement risk? Anybody? You rarely have settlement risk because generally a good healthy or a good valid authorization means it will settle. What you have is, from a credit or debit card and an ACH perspective, You have a finality risk. In the credit card and the debit card world, we call that finality risk the opportunity for what? Begins with a C. Chargebacks. Excellent, Fred. It's a chargeback. With the ACH, you have returned items. Okay, and I probably should have started the first session out with this because we could have evaluated every payment method by kind of those four components, those four key elements of a payments system. Food for thought. I think I'll put that up as a slide in the online. Now remember, guys, there's all sorts of social stuff in there to use as well. So it is an alternative payment method, but let's say, for example, you have authorization risk where you don't, or authentication risk where it's going to end up with with a finality issue or a settlement issue. So your returned items, let's say, are, and it's not out of the question to pay $5 for a returned ACH. So now the cost of that $100 sale is maybe 10 cents for the original clearing of that, or we call it kind of the deposit into the network. But then you've got that returned item, which which actually is kind of settlement slash finality. It's more like, it's probably in there. So now on that $100 item, it's cost you $5.10. Assuming you didn't even send out the item. Let's hope you didn't send the item out. So that gives you a net, that kind of gives you an overall cost of payment acceptance of 5.1%, which is way higher than the average debit card interchange that we have right now. So one of those things is, what's your cost of services or goods if you're selling an MP3 and you're not, it doesn't cost you anything. If you're selling documentation and your cost of goods sold is zero, ACH might be one of those things where you look at you look at the cost at the 10-cent level or something, and you can actually stomach that. So that's kind of a food for thought. And then there's some innovative things that I'm going to introduce at the ACH Ecom and MCOM webinar. That's uber cool. So I had to pique your interest on that. We looked at part one in the buckets. And I've got some cool things that happened from day one that we're going to talk about. So remember, I was very bullish on PayPal. I'm even more bullish on PayPal. I'm like thinking that I'm going to throw my entire life savings into eBay stock. I keep looking at this thing, and as much as I used to despise them, I think I could wear PayPal T-shirts around all the time from what they've done. I did. There was an update. There's an update on Google Wallet and Serve that I'm going to share with you, and then we may go online for ZipZap. I forgot to give you that homework. So in today's session, there are a couple things. There's some interesting developments and stuff that I like from these other buckets. First and foremost, let's kind of move it around a little bit. Credit-based. BillMeLater is still there. Uber cool. They do good. They've got a great product. Anybody know who owns BillMeLater? Then the other product that we're going to talk briefly about is no longer called Credix. They changed their name, and I'm going to throw in an additional one that I kind of encountered during one of my trips up to New Hampshire, and it's Why Not Lease It, which I think is very, very cool as well. So I'm going to make sure I write that down so that we can look at Why Not Lease It, and that's really for an e-commerce and a brick and mortar application. So that's cool, and it's an innovation that I think works well for like the furniture industry, for even cell phones. Very cool. Um, so we've got the credit-based stuff, BillMeLater, Credex. I'm going to throw Why Not Lease It in there. We've got online bill pay, which is pay with my bank, not use my bank. Okay, so I had to correct that one. Pay with my bank, which is now the new name for Secure Vault Payments. Does anybody know who started Secure Vault Payments way back when? Give you 30 seconds to answer that. I gotta get the little sound thing. Dung 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 dung. Now pay with my bank. Formerly, this payment method was introduced as part of the uh, Internet Council of what regulatory body? It's pretty good. Nacha. Okay. So Pay with My Bank was Notch's Secure Vault Payments. And for the longest time, they could not get traction. They could not get any traction. They were having the hardest time kind of, I don't know if it was making the business case. I don't know if it was getting the airtime or the ear time of merchants. But we've got some pretty compelling pricing that I'll show you from a Pay with My Bank perspective. So, Pay with My Bank is alive and well and living. And I was one of the first ones. I did some work for them. It's a very cool product. But I also kind of thought that it was one of those things that was kind of going to die off simply because of debit cards and things like that. The risk I see with Pay with My Bank as we move on to think about is we still have 25% of we still have 25% of our population that does not have a bank account. So online bill pay or online banking, if you will, kind of doesn't work from that perspective. So we're going to kind of really get into kind of the meat and potatoes of this today. So we've got Pay with My Bank, and I think formerly the payment method formerly known as eBillMe is now officially dead. It was it was kludgy at best. It was multi-step for the end user and multi-problematic for the merchant who received it. And in looking at Western Union, who bought eBillMe, it looks like they've kind of taken down WU Pay for the time being, which is probably a good idea from a product perspective because I mean, if I can't see any compelling business case for it from a merchant perspective, I got to think that they were having a hard time selling that to the merchant who's trying to figure out: do I take BillMeLater? Do I take Pay with My Bank? Do I take Bitcoin? And there's some cool announcements from a Bitcoin perspective as well. So then we go to the online banking platforms, and I'm going to talk about the one that I think we should keep a keen eye out, and it's called Clear Exchange. Now, and we'll go through that. Clear Exchange is indeed a force to be reckoned with, and it is indeed a let's call it a contender or a competitor to PayPal. So if you are a merchant accepting PayPal, one thing that you should probably do is circle Clear Exchange and determine at what point they might be able to implement an API into their system. So that's one of the things where, if I'm a merchant that is very much e-commerce oriented, Clear Exchange is probably one that would be on my radar of to do further exploration. PayNet and Popmoney are other P2P or online banking, or just call them P2P, kind of like a PayPal started out to be, but they have very distinct system limitations. i.e., both users have to be with banks that are on a Fiserv or an FIS platform. So I'm going to be very bearish on those two if I get to even pontificating about those. The last one that I'm going to talk briefly about is Bitcoin, because I'm still very, very big on Bitcoin from that perspective. So moving on. WalletBase Payments. Here's some of the updates that I found as I was kind of meandering around this week in Middle Tennessee. Look what arrived in the mail today, in fact. Anybody know what that is? Remember from last week's session? What is that? That, ladies and gentlemen, I'm assuming that we're having kind of a lunch nod off. Don't make me sing, okay? That is the PayPal payment card. That blue thing right there arrived today. It's not the PayPal debit card. It's the PayPal payment card. My PayPal debit card is gray and has a MasterCard logo. This is the PayPal payment card. So I could have used this at Office Depot as well. Kind of cool. If you think about it, it's just blue on the front of it. So it arrived today, and that's the debit card. Now, if you look at the back of that, this is what really kind of rocked my world. I really have to get a life, because when payment cards rock your world, you know that you've got a really pathetic life. Anyway, you've got your mag stripe right here, but there is no PAN. There is no visible primary account number. Okay? So, this right now screams secure. And I'll tell you why. Because a lot of the issues that we have with fraud is from writing down the PAN when the card is not in your possession, i.e., and this is not, it's not a slam to anybody that works in food service, but a lot of that stuff, they'll take your card and then they can write down basically most of the information that's needed from a, from a fraud perspective. So there is nothing from that regard on this card. This is the live card. I mean, I just need to activate it after this session. And it basically has my name, and it also has my account number ending in 0272. And the CVV2, if you will, right there, seems to be the same as the account ending. So I think they kept it kind of simple, and it's got an expiration date on it. Now, this is pretty, I think this is really, really cool, okay, from this perspective. Okay, so this came in today, and what I am sharing with you right now, I don't know if it's confidential or not, but there are several processors that now inherently support the PayPal card. Okay, and I'm showing you kind of a merchant, basically what we offer from a merchant processing perspective out to smaller merchants here in Tennessee. But our merchant, our merchant processing agreement now includes the PayPal network access fee. And the retail swiped rate will actually apply for Visa, MasterCard, and Discover. So if we were to price a merchant at 1.59%, ostensibly the PayPal card would be priced at 1.59%. This is all, I haven't looked at all of the information yet, but I'm assuming that it's all priced the same. I just need to know kind of what our costs are from an acquire perspective on global payments. But the network access fee is 1.85 cents, which happens to be the same as Discover's network access fee, because they partnered up a while back. And so wherever Discover is accepted, and that's basically everywhere, 1.9 million merchants around, basically in the United States, you now have you now can use your PayPal card. So, does that require a separate addendum if you're already accepting Discover? You're certainly not going to accept this card online, but it may be one of those things that's automatic that if you're accepting Discover at the point of sale, and I'm going to test this today, believe it or not, I'm going to go for sushi after this, and they accept Discover at the sushi restaurant, so I'm going to see if it actually works. So go back into the social forum later on, maybe tomorrow, and I might be able to have a video there for you guys to see. Who knows? I'm trying to get you guys to be interactive. And so from this perspective, Amex is always a separate interchange rate, and it's always a separate addendum on any of our retail processing agreements. But what I'm seeing right here is that PayPal's willing to take 1.59% based upon going out and what's their cost from a balance transfer from basically what the funds are on the merchant are on my PayPal account. What honestly is PayPal's cost if I have $600 in my PayPal account and I use this card? Anybody? Zero. Because the funds are already in PayPal's wallet or on PayPal's system. So now they're spread if they're getting 1.59% or 1.39% or whatever it is. And I'll do a little more work. I didn't have time to really get into what the minimum discount rate is or what our cost is on global. But if they've got the balance on their system already, they are indeed they have full 100% spread. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Remember now, the PayPal debit MasterCard, which goes to my balance, is issued by, hold on, let me open this up and I'll share it with you. The PayPal debit MasterCard, which actually goes up against my account again, is issued by the Bancorp Bank. Now, the Bancorp Bank is a $2 billion bank, so they are under Durbin. So that's probably a 1% cost to PayPal. So they're getting much less spread on the PayPal debit MasterCard than they are on their own card brand. Brilliant. Again, brilliant. These guys, I tell you, they're part of the Big Five now. They're taking over. They really are. They're taking over as basically a brand unto themselves. So again, I'm bullish on PayPal. So I think this is very, very cool. As I went through my Serve account and found some interesting things from a Serve perspective. Is that there were three things that I wanted to point out from an alternate payments thing when I was over at Office Depot. First and foremost, okay, here I am. Sorry, I hit that button again. Thank you for keeping me honest. So after I was done talking about how I'm bullish on PayPal, I started in on doing a little more research on my Serve account. And some of the functionality that they've enhanced Serve with is not only that you load your Serve account. First of all, you get a Serve card, which is accepted anywhere American Express is accepted. But it also gives you the opportunity of having direct deposit added to your Serve account to a maximum of $100,000 per year. Okay. Now keep in mind, if somebody uses their Serve card, that's Amex interchange. So that's basically one of those things where And and the value add, I still want membership rewards if I'm going to use the serve card, because I want, I want membership rewards on that. However, what I noticed is my serve account, one email address sent news at tdgphenix.com, sent a payment request, a funds request to El De Palma at tdgphenix.com for the amount of $50. When I clicked on that, to log in, it said click in here to log into your serve account. But if you didn't have a serve account, anybody want to venture to guess what serve gave you the chance to do? It gave you the chance to open an account. So, for example, if I see right here, when I clicked on that, hopefully you can see that you're seeing my screen. Welcome to American Express. Did you purchase a card? And if not, you'll open up and they'll send you one. So from that perspective, they're trying to get basically, no, basically they're trying to get new account openers. Did you guys see that? Beautiful. I'm getting good at this. I like this. So you can do direct deposit. You can send a payment request to anybody. You can fund it in a couple different ways. Serve actually allows you to add funds to your Serve account for no charge at CVS, and one other place. So when you think about the green dot, it's always like $4.95 to add funds to that green dot card. Serve and CVS actually partnered up on that. The other thing is that, of course, there's the mobile device as well. So I'm really big on seeing what's happening from an Amex perspective. Now, I ordered a wallet card for Google because Google is now kind of copying PayPal. So I ordered that to see what will happen. But one of the things that I noticed that still continues about Google is, first of all, Google Checkout has been shut down. So there's no real merchant integration from Google Checkout right now. So this is going to be, I mean, Google's kind of losing dynamic. So I'm bullish on PayPal, and I'm almost I'm almost throwing the towel for for Google and Wallet and all of that. They have such a promising opportunity with their mobile and owning the operating system, and I think they haven't had the right execs managing it. I don't think any of their execs have had any real payment experience per se. So from that, we migrate out. Are there any questions about any of the updates to the payment methods that we discussed previously? Good. Credit-based payments. These guys have been around forever. It used to be a company called I4 Commerce, and it's now owned by PayPal, PayPal, eBay, kind of all that within that infrastructure. Does anybody here accept BillMeLater as a payment method? Okay, what it allows you to do is basically open up instant credit while you're in the middle of the purchase. So it's now an additional payment method from from an online perspective. So now you've got, and generally, if the merchant is taking BML, they're also taking PayPal. So they've added two more payment methods to their mix. So they've got MasterCard, they've got Visa, they've got Amex and Discover, and they probably have BML and PayPal. If you were to look at this specific price point of $575 for shoes, although there's nothing like a good pair of Ferragamos, I hear. You're probably not going to add ACH to this because obviously of the authorization and the clearing and settlement risk, clearing, settlement, and finality risk. You really want a final finality with that payment method. Okay. Um, and I can do a dispute with my PayPal account. It's just very difficult because the merchant can show that they shipped the goods, that there's a UPS package delivery signature, all of that stuff. There's a trail, there's an audit trail of that, kind of like in MasterCard and Visa land. So you do have finality, but you also have dispute capabilities with these guys. But you're not getting instant credit that actually is unknown. So what BML does is they will go out during this process and pull basically a FICO score. For lack of a better term, they look somewhere around in the 650s and above. They were I think they might even be higher to 700 now. They were lower earlier on when credit was cheap and easy, but I think they've upped their FICO requirements simply because their previous underwriter actually ended up in the scandal of the CDOs, collateralized debt obligations, and all that securitization crap that we experienced a few years ago. So they've upped their FICO requirements before issuing instant credit. So it basically goes through and you basically put in just, the core components of getting instant credit, and they basically approve you at that point. It goes back to the merchant and says, we have an approval, so the sale is good. So they've got a decent demographic and they've got a great household income. $73,000 is amazing. Annual spend about $2,100. They look for a FICO closer to 700, as I understand. So this is not for the credit challenged, if you will. So your BillMeLater demographic has to be Brentwood, Tennessee, has to be Williamson County, has to be an upscale type of a spender. One interesting thing that I love about BillMeLater now is their merchant base. Actually, several things. Because they are part of PayPal, they they kind of do the double team sale to the merchants. But these merchants who are in these categories have high average order values, AOVs, and they in fact see the value of this added payment method. So say, for example, I was buying an Apple computer, an Apple laptop, a MacBook. I think that's about $13.99. I could go in to Apple online. I could order that. I could do a BillMeLater credit application, get a response back, and then all of a sudden I've not added any additional credit to my credit cards. The thing that is important to understand from that perspective is your FICO score actually decreases with the higher percentage you have in your capacity. So there's the capacity, say you have a $20,000 capacity, and if you were to add, say you had 8,000 on that card, you are at 40%. Not bad, but not, not optimal. But if I were buying that, actually there's a better MacBook that's like 2,500. So I buy that MacBook and I put it on my Visa. That brings me to 10.5 for all intents and purposes, and that puts me over the 50% to capacity. My FICO's probably going to drop about 20 to 30 points. So that 700 goes down to 670 with one purchase. So that's one of the things where if you offload that purchase to another line of credit like a BillMeLater, you basically increase the capacity. So now say you've got a $24,000 capacity and you have 10,500. You've basically decreased your debt to capacity, your balance to capacity. And I think that's a good approach to that, especially if you're selling high end items that are expensive. $600 shoes obviously are high end items. Contacts, do I need to put that on my Bill Me Later account? That's more like a consumable. But anything like a Blue Fly suit, an Apple computer, a Crutchfield Electronics, things like that, even blinds.com. I mean, if you're putting in expensive shutters or something like that, or travel stuff, it's not bad to offload it, if you will, to that line of credit, which is the jury is still out as to whether it's listed as revolving. Like MasterCard or Visa. I can't confirm nor uh, refute that it's not listed as revolving. So it may be listed as something else, which actually doesn't go into the revolving line. Kind of cool, I think. Anyway, it all depends on how they actually report it to the bureaus. So I really am still quite big on Bill Me Later as well, of course, because it's a PayPal slash eBay product. One of the interesting things that Bill Me Later did was they opened up Bill Me Later to merchants who use the gateway. Now, I believe that you could take a session and charge it to Bill Me Later. I believe that it was listed as a payment method. I'm not quite sure, but it's one of those things that I believe it shows up when you get presented to the PayPal payment page. So for anything, I think it actually hits. I think it actually is germane to my operation as well. Since my sales are over $99, my orders are over $99. So they really opened that up for I call it middle market expansion, because I do have a high average order value. I mean, it's $300 if not more based upon the session. That's a good thing if you are, most people, obviously this is an office expense, but if I were doing a real estate seminar, which most people have to pay for personally, or I was doing how to flip houses, that would in fact be an interesting way to look at it. That you could in fact do BML as a payment method to that middle market demographic. So this is one of the things where I'm really big on Bill Me Later as well. Moving on. So that's the mothership. That's kind of the grand dame of credit, online credit or e-commerce online instant credit, from a perspective of an alternative payment method. Now remember, it's an alternative payment method because it's not MasterCard, Visa, or it's not Discover or Amex. So we say au revoir to Credex, because apparently Credex is used by other companies, and we say bonjour to Get Financing. So apparently they renamed themselves from Credex to Get Financing. Now there was a company a long time ago called Money Isle, which was able to do kind of the e-loan or the what's that other company that allows you to bid on that bids on your mortgages? I can't remember, if you want to type that in. But these guys basically kind of do something interesting. It's more like Money Isle was more deposit oriented, so they actually would take your $5,000 CD request and they'd partner you up with a bank that would get you the best rate of return. This acts more like a gateway or a network that will take certain data elements or certain characteristics of your FICO, of your credit application, and they will farm it out, or they will route it to appropriate lenders or underwriters. So they're really more of a network, if you will, almost like a Priceline.com from the hotel industry. But they'll go out and farm out your app to lenders based upon, the core components of your credit application. So these guys are out there kind of trying to, get merchants from a, uh, sell my credit, kind of find me a lender who I can, who will underwrite me for this specific thing that I want to buy. Okay, so Get Financing is out there, but how does it work? They actually will charge a discount fee. So when you think about it, they're going to charge a discount fee. It's very, very obtuse because you do not get the discount fee back if the merchandise is returned. Not loving that component right here. In the event the merchandise is returned, the discount fee due to Get Financing is non-refundable. Every refund, every returned item or refund in the card world has a refund, actually refunds you your interchange. So there is in fact a spread that you pay, but you don't give it all up from that regard. So this basically, I mean, they charge a discount fee. Nothing is there. It's in Appendix A, which they didn't have in Appendix A. I'm not loving the things are not, the discount rate is non-refundable. So I'm seeing that they'll end up with a lot of pushback, or they just won't get critical mass from the merchant community from this regard. Perhaps they should sell tuition financing. I mean, that might work. Some schools might pay something like that. Okay. So the other one that I wanted to show you is in fact why not lease it. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to here. Why not lease it? So these people are actually based in Manchester, New Hampshire, which is kind of interesting, right up the street from Payment Tech. But if you 98% approved, and if you look at, let's just take a look. It was hard to find store locator. It was hard. This had been down before. So if you look at a lot of their, Kmart, a lot of Kmarts, a lot of, let's see, furniture stores. I'm trying not to go too fast, but let's find Sears. So they have Sears, they have Kmart, they have, sorry, I don't want to scroll down too fast here, but I'm going to. They have appliances. So they also have a lot of furniture stores. I think that it's a cool thing from this regard. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and go back here. So the first one that I'm kind of interested in is whynotleaseit.com. I think it's big if you have very high ticket items like cell phones. Nobody wants to keep their cell phone forever. I mean, and it's one of those things where it could work really well. It must be working okay for them if they've got Sears and Kmart and appliance stores and stuff like that. So I'm kind of interested in I find this I find that payment method kind of a keep on the back burner, if you will, of an e-commerce integration. And I'm gonna reach out and do more investigation from regard of what they, kind of what their demographic is, what their market, their channels are, and stuff like that. When you go to online bill pay, I'm now big bullish on the formerly Secure Vault Payments. They were dying a horrible death, and I mean, they'll be the first to admit it. So, I mean, I'm not saying anything that's really bad. They had like, they had the Synovus banks, I think, as their, as banks that were on board. Those are the, as well as I think one of the banks, what was the bank? U.S. Bank. That's the bank that basically had signed on, but they were having a hard time getting mass adoption by financial institutions. Now, this is the Secure Vault Payments that was Notch's kind of brainchild, or Notch's import from Europe and Australasia. It was set up by EY's network. So Secure Vault Payments now is pay with my bank, and so I tested it, and I actually like it. So if you look at some of the merchants, and at this point in time, I'm going to kind of show you, I'm going to demonstrate I'm going to show you kind of how it works. And sharing. We're on Stacks and Stacks right now, which is one of the merchants that they advertise that uses it. So I was buying, oh my God, I got to thank you for visiting Stacks and Stacks. I'm buying, let's say, for example, knives. So if you look, there's a cutlery set for $148.95. Okay, and if I look at this, I need to select my bank. Now, these are all of the banks that participate in Pay with My Bank, the Secure Vault Payments platform. So USAA, I click on USAA, which is my bank, and I hit continue. And I'm not going to buy it. But I can change my bank there, but I can put in my password, my online ID, and my password, and continue, and it will automatically debit my account and credit the merchant. So this is uber cool. I mean, uber cool, and it now finally works. Does anybody have any questions from that regard on this? I mean, did everybody get to see the numbers of, the quality of the banks that are there? You have, Chase, USAA, Wells Fargo, SunTrust, and this is the pricing of, this is the value proposition that they're making to merchants. So it's less than 1% and 30 cents. 90 basis points and 30 cents, or for a biller, i.e. Dish Networks or whatever, property management, government, education, $1 for colleges to pay tuition, which was one of the markets they were working on. I'm now really, really happy about this one because this is guaranteed funds. Okay, these are guaranteed funds to the merchant for that $1 or the 90 basis points. Okay. Now, they're a little off on merchant pricing because this is negotiable by merchant. And credit cards, well, probably closer to probably 2%, from that regard. So they're a little bit high. Dish would qualify as a biller. Yes, Dish Networks would qualify as a biller. Utilities, telecom, yep, you'd qualify as a biller. And I'm certain that they wouldn't turn you down as Dish because you're Dish. Who wants to turn Dish away? It's a nice logo to have. So on the Dish site, you would say pay with my bank, and that would give you access to all those banks. The only difference is, think of it this way. You want to push them to a you may be able. This one of the things that this is free association right now. You perhaps maybe you can pay out of your savings account if it's a large purchase. I haven't gone through because I'm not really in the mood to buy knives, but right now with Durbin, your interchange rate is 0.05 or 5 basis points plus 22 cents. So you're still 85 basis points higher. But what you do not have, ladies and gentlemen, is what we don't have. Sorry, I keep hitting this button. I'm so sorry. What we don't have here in the difference of the 85 basis points between Durbin debit and pay with my bank is chargebacks, because you're using the bank's authentication and it's 100% final. Which, is it worth it from that regard? Is it worth it? From a merchant perspective, do you think it's worth adding that as a payment method for 100% finality and no chargebacks? I reach out to you to answer that as merchants. And I got a resounding maybe. Way to go. I like that. Good. So I'm kind of keen on this right now. WUPay, which used to be eBillMe, I believe is dead. I'm not even going to try to keep this one alive. We now go from online bill pay because it does, and I'm going to say that probably pay with my bank is more online banking pay as opposed to online bill pay. Any merchant can become a bill pay receiver. I mean, it's basically MasterCard RPPS is basically the huge mothership of online bill pay. So any merchant or any entity can receive RPPS payments, including the federal government, which is amazing why they don't. But the online banking stuff that is now leaning towards. See, what happens is with pay with my bank is they actually go out and they ping your bank account immediately based on the balance. So that authorization means that they're going to put a hold on it using that network. So I really like pay with my bank right now. They've gotten the critical mass that they need, and with all those DDAs, the penetration of those DDAs, I'm going to eventually kind of calculate that. Maybe we'll do that as a discussion. You guys are welcome to use the online discussion system way after this session, and I really wish you would. Education should be continual. You have full access to that ad infinitum. So online banking, the one that I really, really like that we're going to talk about right now is Clear Exchange. And I have used it. Formerly a Wells Fargo banking client, I used it, and I liked it because I had an intern that banked at Bank of America. The only bank that was not up and running of the 3 mega banks on this was Chase. Shock of shocks. We used to have a motto at Chase that we couldn't launch something if the space shuttle were attached to it. I guess, too big to fail. We were even too big to fail back in 1997. So Clear Exchange operates kind of like on an email basis. So El De Palma at TDG-Phenix can send an email, can send a payment request through my online bank, or can send a payment out to somebody else's email at Bank of America, and I have. So it's working, and it's generally the next day. So it's a good P2P perspective. Now, will these guys actually go out and try to lay claim to some of the PayPal revenue that has been hijacked, if you will, pirated from them? That's one of the things to kind of stay tuned about, because they may create an API into the Clear Exchange system in order for you to simply access or debit my bank account using an email address. Because if you debit my bank account using ACH, that bank gets no revenue whatsoever. They become an RDFI. So it's a cost to them. But if they can charge you 10 basis points for a real-time transaction using my email address to, let's say, Wells Fargo, that's better than, for example, PayPal, which might be charging you 1.5% or 150 basis points. Just food for thought. I just need to take a 1 minute break, if you will. So let's take a couple minutes just as a quick break to grab water. Okay? Okay, we're back. Sorry about the. It was a quick bio break. Had to run quickly. Okay, so this is another one to think about. I wouldn't put this on a must follow, if you will. I would say that if we're looking at some of the cool stuff that's going on, I mean, it's PayPal as a yes. It's a BillMeLater as a yes. It could be a green dot as a keep an eye out. Pay with my bank is a keep an eye out as well, and and probably I'm gonna say why not lease it as kind of my top five from that. But you should also think about Bitcoin. We're kind of migrating into Bitcoin. The other two payment methods under this online banking thing is PayNet and Pop Money, and those are person-to-person facilitated payments, but the banks have to be on the same system. And if anybody knows anything about core banking systems, it is a mess. It is a disaster, and Fiserv is one of the biggest disasters out there when it comes to banking systems, because none of their systems talk to each other, and they're all over the place, and they acquire systems, and then, for example, Open Systems (OSI) was bought by Fiserv, I believe. So what was a great community banking systems has now been kind of, you know, swallowed by the Fiserv behemoth, and there's like 8 different systems. So trying to rely on person-to-person payments from like a PayNet or a Pop Money perspective, I think is kind of convoluted, and honestly, I think that they're playing in something where they just don't have the capabilities to play in. So those are kind of that's kind of my perspective on it. Core systems can barely keep themselves afloat, let alone should not be playing in a P2P perspective from that regard. I mean, they're not real. They were the ones that held up, for example, remote deposit capture. They were the ones that have been holding up mobile payments. They're the ones who have been holding up a lot of innovations. So for them to kind of play in this P2P alternative payment space is kind of ludicrous, and I think they should kind of step out. Now, that's a Larry DePalma editorial, if you will, and it only represents my personal opinion to that. But I think that anybody who's been in banking for a long time will realize that those guys are basically just giants who can't get out of their own way. And they've been screwing up remote deposit capture since 2004. So why at 2014 would we want them to step into P2P payments? I'm not very keen on core banking systems. I think that it's one of those things where it's almost becoming a commodity and it's a pain in the neck to deal with them. Moving on. So from a Bitcoin perspective, and why am I saying Bitcoin? Because Overstock.com, which, as we know, is in the e-commerce space, has announced its planned acceptance, and so now it's alternative. And it actually, as of this month, went live. And I like these guys, Coinbase. I met them at the Bitcoin conference out in San Jose. They're very, very cool. They've got good products. And so Overstock.com use them, and I love their product. Coinbase is very, very cool. So that means now that Bitcoin, that virtual currency, it's not virtual, it's digital. It is a digital currency. Okay? It is not virtual. Virtual means it doesn't exist. This is digital. This is a digital currency. And it is indeed something that I want to talk briefly about, and we'll have you out of here probably by 1:30, which is cool. This is probably the most overwhelming of what I call alternative payments. When you look at the gold rush, we all went out, I'm not that old. Everybody went out west and started mining for gold, okay, because there was a lot of gold out there. This is indeed a new form of the gold rush because you're mining for Bitcoin. And mining for Bitcoin is a computing process. Okay. And the Winklevi twins own 11% of Bitcoin right now. They really kind of cornered the market on Bitcoin. And recently it went up to over $1,000. So they bought it, I think, $200 a coin. And I think they made a fortune. They made an absolute fortune in Bitcoin. So what this does is it takes these supercomputers or these very fast computers. So think about what you did in the gold rush. You went out to California, and you started, mining. You started, knocking through stones and rocks and dirt and rivers, and you started mining for coins. Okay, you started mining for gold. And that gold ended up, in itself becoming a currency or becoming something of value. Okay? That gold as a precious metal had a value to it. And when you think about gold, it has, I just want to go towards here, it has a finite amount on the planet Earth. So one of the things to a currency or to currency stability is that the external market factors and what happens to our currency when we, in effect, issue more, it dilutes it. So you only have a finite amount of gold on this planet. You also only have a finite amount of Bitcoin. So this really is one of those currencies where it's almost the gold standard, if you will. Like you you have X amount of gold in Fort Knox, and our dollars were based on the gold standard. So when you look at this digital currency, it actually has Ron Paul absolutely loves it, and it's got great kudos from economists because you only have 21 million coins. Granted, the decimal point goes out to like 8 or 10 decimals, so decimalization goes way out. So you never, at $1,000 a coin or $800 a coin, let me check I can check my phone. It's at 954 right now. Today, high price was 974, low price was 943. If I only have $100 in Bitcoin, then I only have 0.11 BTC. Okay, but it decimalizes way out. So if you're selling a $50 item, it would be 0.05 BTC that you would check out with, and therefore, it basically works like, let's say, the euro or like any other currency. You kind of know your conversion rate to the fiat currency. I am very big on Bitcoin. It is the great equalizer of global e-commerce because you never have to repatriate it from another currency. So you have your Bitcoin and you repatriate it back to USD. So somebody in Thailand doesn't need to use Thai baht to buy something through you, and then you repatriate that Thai baht at a bank, and do a foreign exchange, which includes a spread and all of that. Bitcoin actually it's digital, it's electronic. So the way that it works, and it's fascinating, but you get these mega computers and you basically mine, and when you find that you might have a hash, a block, whatever it is that this thing is, you send it out to the network and they confirm it, and they actually add a bonus for difficulty, and so you end up with X number of coins. Okay, you have to create these blocks. Okay, and this is the technical, you don't even need to worry about that, but I've got the stuff in there. So these blocks basically are worth coins, with the difficulty factor. So you get the block, you can go from 25 to 50. The blocks depend on what the coins per block depend on the difficulty. The problem is that it is, in fact, using a lot of natural resources. About 982 megawatt hours a day. This is, in fact, using a lot of energy to find Bitcoin. So the profits from the day of mining of about 681,000 based on current value of Bitcoin. So you have to spend roughly 31,000 U.S. homes worth of electricity in order to make this money. So these computers are actually, I hate to call it, but raping and pillaging our natural resources for electricity. It's not, and at some point, I don't know if the federal government knows this side of it. I mean, they know that the FinCEN stuff is coming down from a drug perspective or a money laundering perspective, but from the source of 31,000 U.S. homes, is that a day's worth of nuclear energy, nuclear reactor? These are the things where this Bitcoin mining is actually taking a lot of natural resources or hydropower or coal. Could we be better heating 31,000 U.S. homes, or using that coal to heat homeless shelters in the wintertime? These are the things where, of course, the liberal Larry DePalma steps out right now. These are the things where we have to start thinking that this virtual currency or this digital currency is actually, although more closely represents what a currency should look like, from an economic perspective, actually a currency should not take away 31,000 homes worth of energy from a mining perspective. So those are the things. If you look at the key players in the ecosystem, there's kind of a graph here that kind of shows the major problems with exchanges are 45% of Bitcoin exchanges end up closing within 390 days. It's one of the reasons that causes the fluctuation in cost. I'm not going to include that empirical analysis because it's but however, the finality is the finality. The 100% finality as well is in Bitcoin. There is no dispute. Okay, it is also subject to regulator ignorance, and I don't know if we still have the U.S. Treasury on here, but I don't think they quite understand enough of what I think this is. The U.S. dollar in itself can affect drug deals just as easily as PayPal can, or just as easily as Bitcoin can. But I see it as the global equalizer to e-commerce. And I'm very bullish on Bitcoin, aside from the fact that it's probably using far too many natural resources for mining perspective. So that's kind of my Bitcoin perspective. From that regard, there's a lot of opportunity for financial institutions to set up BTC denominated accounts in their banks and provide some sort of a trust or a custody perspective for these processors. What if you don't care at all about global commerce? That's a good question. I think we all should care about global commerce. I think that globalization of commerce is here. You're not allowed, and somebody said Dish isn't allowed to have global operations. Say, for example, though, you buy something, and EchoStar owns the rights outside the U.S. That's all excellent. But say, for example, you purchase something that is, in fact, on demand. Or say you own an on-demand network. Or say you own a pay-per-view network. And you can, in fact, send that pay-per-view stuff outside of the United States. Can you use Bitcoin to deliver that to Russia? That's just a food for thought. It may not be current day, but it could be something else. It could be an acquisition. It could be a merger. It could be something else from that perspective. It could be your new job if you go to someplace else, of something to at least know about. These are the things to at least be familiar with it and the buzz phrases, because if Overstock.com is trying it out with Coinbase, it's not a fly-by-night thing. And if the Winklevi have cornered the market on this, it's here to stay, I say. And if the feds are shutting down things without really thinking about what the heck's going on, then you got to know that it's good, because I've been watching that, and it is indeed a disaster from that regard. They haven't. I mean, they're throwing everything, at the Mount Goxes and stuff like that. I mean, they're just basically. Yeah, I mean, you could do the same thing to PayPal. You could do the same thing to Dwolla. And these are the things where they shouldn't just focus on Bitcoin simply because it's anonymous from a currency perspective. The Coinbases of the world are not making it anonymous. So there is a market. There is supply versus demand. China has banned Bitcoin. That drove the price down. From a market perspective, from over 1,000 down to 800, but it's back up to the 950s. Okay, there are normal economic factors as well. The exchanges, if the exchange has a hack or has a government intervention, it screws up the price. These are standard things that go on from a Bitcoin perspective. However, if you got 100 Bitcoins and you got it at a date when it was 800 only a couple weeks ago, and you held those Bitcoins till today, you would have had $80,000 in sales rise to 95,400 today. So you now have currency fluctuation, which in fact could in fact arise in a profit. And so, do you have to report that? Yes, it is in fact a reportable financial impact, from what I understand from the IRS perspective. I think that's a recent ruling from their regard. But I'm still very bullish on Bitcoin. Okay, there's a lot of regulatory discussion, and there's a FinCEN view that I think is kind of ridiculous, but whatever. I think that Bitcoin has a great opportunity, and ZipZap is one of those things where you can drop funds off at a CVS and purchase Bitcoin, using, like a Bit Instant, through a Bit Instant, which is also a payment processor. You cannot use any of these payment systems for online gambling, but we now have 3 states that have online gambling, for which none of these payment systems work. But Bitcoin, lo and behold, would in fact work. You can load cash onto a Bitcoin account at, say, for example, Bit Instant, and then you can use that Bit Instant to do your online gambling in New Jersey, in Delaware, or in Nevada. So when you think about immediately writing it off, and the DRF did it last year, oh, they just poo-pooed it, and they were completely wrong. There is a great potential for this virtual / digital currency. And to listen to some of the brainiacs that were developing stuff, they have Bitcoin ATMs now, that are coming onto the marketplace. The brainiac power that is behind this currency, I think, is profound. So I'm big on it. You can buy things at basically shopping malls using Bitcoin. Okay. This is why, it is the great e-commerce equalizer, global e-commerce equalizer. So what I was saying is, when we went back to MoneyPack a while ago, where you could in fact use MoneyPack to load PayPal, you could in fact use MoneyPack to load a wallet at Harrah's, or you could use MoneyPack to load your Bit Instant or your your Coinbase wallet. So alternative payments are going outside of this system here, because it will take forever for the regulators to come up with laws or rules to open up this stuff, to really understand and open up the very stringent regulations that are mutating development or innovation in these alternative payment arenas. Okay, so is PayPal ever going to get there with this? They could, because they have it ready to go. So I'm thinking PayPal next I may have just given them a great idea if they ever take this course, but they could take the PayPal load card and you could load it to your Coinbase or your BitInstant wallet. So you've got this multifunctional wallet. Amazon.coins tried to do a virtual currency and it failed miserably. So with that, we ended 26 minutes early, but we got 3.5 hours in, and there are still discussion databases and things like that in this course. Any questions so far, or as we are now? Okay. No one's typing. You guys have my email address. So with that,